Hello and welcome to the Counselling Driven by Christian Values webinar with Dr. Julie Masilo. Dr. Julie Masilo is the co-coordinator of counselling program here at Eastern College Australia. Julie is a registered psychologist and an endorsed community psychologist and a counselling psychologist as well. Julie runs the counselling courses that are available here at Eastern College Australia, and they are a Bachelor Social Sciences degree majoring in counselling and a Master of Community Counselling. Julie enjoys supporting students in their studies and inspiring them to learn how to help people in need to find a sense of well-being and hope. I'm now going to hand it over to Dr. Julie Masilo, and she's going to share all about the counselling.
So nice to be introduced by someone else. And yeah, I'm looking forward to sharing about our counselling program and how we're driven by Christian values. Now, in order to do that, I've got some nice overheads. So I'll just share my screen now, and hopefully you'll see the screen and not just me. So here we go. Share. That's it. So hopefully now you can see my PowerPoint presentation, which says Counselling Driven by Christian Values. And that's what we do here at Eastern College. And that's why I love teaching here with a faculty of Christians and with students who really want to learn how to become the best Christians they can be and to learn counselling skills in whatever area of work they're interested in. So we help people in our program to help others find hope. We teach counselling skills for people to become counsellors, but also people can choose a couple of units in our counselling course to help them to be chaplains, although a lot of our counsellors end up chaplains too, or in any sort of ministry, pastors, youth workers, community workers. But not only that, learning counselling skills helps to improve all relationships. So it can help you personally to help others with their relationships. And I just chose this cute saying on the side here. Life ends when you stop dreaming. Love ends when you stop caring. Hope ends when you stop believing. So we need to believe and to dream and to show caring of others so they can in turn care for others themselves. So in our counselling program, we talk about how one of the most important things as a counsellor or any kind of Christian worker or any kind of community worker is to be able to show empathy and a non-judgmental attitude. And one of the first client-centred type counsellors that pushed this was Carl Rogers. And you'll see in a moment how he's really talking about someone else that we know even better, but I'll talk about that in a moment. But here's his words of Carl Rogers. When the other person is hurting, confused, troubled, anxious, alienated, terrified, or when he or she is doubtful of self-worth, uncertain as to identity, then understanding is called for. The gentle and sensitive companionship of an empathetic stance provides illumination and healing. In such situations, deep understanding is, I believe, the most precious gift one can give to another. I think they're the most beautiful words, helping people to find self-worth and to have an empathetic stance as we listen to them so they can work themselves to try and understand what's happening. And that's a very precious gift that we give to them and help them towards healing. Now, Carl Rogers studied first theology, and that's very obvious in his words. And he was mirroring the words and the deeds of Jesus. Jesus healed the brokenhearted. He has sent us too to tell the captives to free. Jesus reached out to those who no one else wanted to talk to. And us as counsellors and ministry workers, or whatever sort of work we do, should be there to reach out to the brokenhearted, to those that no one else wants to talk to. Anyone can be nice to people exactly like them, but to talk to those that are different. Jesus talked to the outcast, to children that his disciples wanted to silence, to Gentiles, and even Gentile women who was unheard of for a man to talk to, a woman who was considered unclean or defiled, and talk to lepers and the poor and the sick and those that didn't seem to be anyone particularly precious at all. But Jesus said they're all precious, and I've come to heal them and to heal the brokenhearted. And that's our calling as counsellors too, or any kind of ministry workers or community workers, to reach out to the brokenhearted with great empathy and non-judgment. The only people Jesus judged were the leaders who didn't treat these people with tender-hearted kindness and reach out to the brokenhearted. And that's what we're called to do too. So in our counselling program, we push these things, as I just said, about empathy, Christ-like empathy, and our counselling is enhanced when we accept with empathy the client's goals at face values, not what we want to push onto them, but what they want to work on. Tailoring counselling to the particular client, not a set of particular models or beliefs. We aren't there to put our beliefs onto them, but to listen to where they're at, to collaborate with our clients instead of dictating to them. We're not a preacher or a teacher, we're more of a guide. Exploring material that is relevant to the client, what they want to talk about. Hope and possibility without minimalising the problem. So we don't gloss over their problem. We try and have a deep understanding and help them to understand the issues, but offer possibility and hope. And encourage clients to focus on the present and the future possibilities instead of focusing only on the past problems. Of course, we need to listen to those past problems with great care and empathy, but then help them to move forward as well. Oh, and in the top corner, I've got the words of my favourite hymn of all: beautiful brokenness, hopeful despair, Lord, in your suffering, Lord, hear our prayer. Bread for those in need, justice, joy, peace, sunrise to sunset, your kingdom increase. I just think they sum up the words beautifully, how we're called to help people go from brokenness to beauty, from despair to hope, just as Jesus did. And this is the other thing that is so important, is to help people find meaning again in life. Often people come to us, or all of us at some stage of our lives, feel a sense of hopelessness or lack of meaning, and we're there to help people find meaning. There's a lovely young woman a couple of years ago, Emily Smith, in the corner there, who did her PhD on the power of meaning. She was a journalist, and she went out to try and help people find happiness in their lives. And she thought it would be, finding the best guy that you could find, or the best partner, and finding the best job and the greatest house, and that would be what made people happy. But as she researched and looked into different religious values and the values of people that have been through many despairing moments, and the great philosophers of this world, and interviewing hundreds of people around the world, both great and those ordinary people, she came to a whole new understanding and realised that it's not about having the perfect relationship or having the perfect career and lots of money. It is about finding meaning. And she broke it up even further into these 4 things that I have on the screen there. That first, we need to find a sense of meaning, a sense of belonging with meaningful relationships. And that's so important. We all need to feel like we belong to a community, and to have that community around us to support us in times of need. So some sense of meaning in life and meaning with those around us, and a purpose in life where we feel like we can give something to others, to serve others in Christ-like compassionate ways. To have purpose in what we do, and not feel like we're rudderless and not knowing where we're going and what we're doing. And the third thing, which I thought was really interesting, I didn't expect, because she herself doesn't come from a Christian background, but something a little bit similar. But she said it was about finding moments of transcendence, moments when we felt not just bogged down in the day-to-day life of things we have to do and the busyness and the difficulties of life, but actually have moments where we felt transcendent, as though it was something bigger than ourselves and something more and greater than just our everyday lives that can sometimes get a bit boring or monotonous or whatever, but that we felt a transcendence. And we can find that often in sacred spaces, such as in a church service. I think a church service really helps us to go into those moments of transcendence when we realise that it's like a guided meditation, when we realise we're part of this greater community, the community of God's people. Or in nature, when we're out in creation and we're away from the busyness of life and we see the beauty of creation, and that feeds our souls and gives us moments of transcendence, either on a mountaintop or by a river or the beach or in a park, whatever it is. For me, it's a walk in a park every day, but everyone has to find their own moments of transcendence. And the last thing she said, which I thought was really, really fascinating, was that we need to find our stories of hope, our redemptive stories of hope, with turning our story of despair to our preferred story of hope. Now, as Christians, we go, oh yeah, we've worked out a redemptive story in Christ. But it means more than that. I mean, that's very special and very important. But it's also about, in each aspect of our life, when we face a problem, to not be bogged down in the problem and stay in that despair, or think, oh no, everything's gone, life is just hopeless, but to always be able to find that thread of hope and to be reminded of the hope that we have, and find hope in a relationship, or hope through a problem, or hope in the community around us and the support around us. But in everything, in every aspect of life, not just a one-off decision, but in each aspect, that we find our redemptive story of hope. And that's what we can do as counsellors or community workers or whatever, using our counselling skills to help people go from their despair, and we all have moments of despair, some just much greater than others, to help people find that story of hope. And we need to do it for ourselves so that we can help others and do it for them too. So I just really like that meaning, purpose, transcendence and redemptive story of hope. And then I just thought I'd go over something that really spoke to my heart when I was learning about counselling, and I came across narrative therapy, and I thought, wow, this is the therapy for me. I use tools of lots of different therapies, but the one I really loved that resonated with my Christian values was narrative therapy. And I did a lot of training in Adelaide, where that's the heart of narrative therapy. And one of the metaphors they use is the tree of life. Now, the tree of life is to help people find strength again and to find their redemptive story of hope, is the way I talk about it. But the tree of life was first used with children in Rwanda who had just been through terrible genocide, and many of them had lost their parents and their grandparents. And so the narrative therapist went into there, talked to the local counsellors and said, what can we do to support your community? What can we work out together to support them? So together they came up with this metaphor of tree of life. And so they talked with the children and helped them each to draw their own tree and think about the different aspects of the tree as a metaphor of their lives. And the first part was their roots. What is valuable about your cultural heritage, about your family heritage? Precious moments with your grandparents or your parents, or in a cultural setting, in your religious community or whatever, your faith community. What is precious about that? And strengthen that story when in those moments of despair with so much loss, this would help them. And I used this actually with a group in Cambodia a year ago, exactly a year ago, with people in Cambodia who had also been through genocide only a couple of decades ago. And they still are dealing with despair of those times, of so many thousands and millions of their people killed. But they said it was so good when you told us we could only think of the good things and remember the positive things from our family history, and to think about as a tree of life and to remember the good things from their culture and not just the bad. And they said that was so good for them. So that's a lovely thing to do, to help people to strengthen that positive story when their life is so filled with their negative and they feel like the negative problems of their whole life. But our job is to help them realise it's one little part of your life and it comes from external forces, but you are more than that, and you have a beauty and preciousness and this wonderful cultural heritage and these lovely roots. And also you have a lot within yourself as the trunk of the tree. And we get people to talk about, what do you enjoy, either in groups or individuals? What do you enjoy? What do you like creating and doing? Or what do you like learning? Or what do you like helping others to do? And help them to remember the joy that they had in life. When I did this with some people, they said, oh, you didn't ask about work. And I said, well, I hope you enjoy your work. And if you do enjoy your work, that's part of your trunk, something that you enjoy. And then the branches are your hopes and dreams for the future. So we get people to draw their branches and think about, what are your hopes and dreams for the future? So you don't just dwell on the problem, but think of what you have for your future and what are your hopes, and really help them develop those dreams and hopes for the future. And then the leaves. Think about the leaves on the tree. Beautiful this time of year with autumn leaves. I love autumn leaves. But leaves, thinking about who is precious from your past and the present people in your lives. When the narrative therapist first did this with the children in Rwanda, they said, oh, if those parents have now died, like grandparents or parents, have those leaves fall down onto the ground. And they had so many children cry, and it was so hard. They said, no. After that, they didn't do that anymore. You keep the leaves in the tree, because they are still part of your life. They're still within you. They're part of your DNA. Their memories are so precious. So your grandparents and your parents, even if they're not here with us physically, in their bodies, they are with us within our own bodies and our own memories, and they have given us so much. Being good role models will hopefully, at least some of the time, good role models for us to hold in our hearts. So we help people remember that too. And then the flowers and the fruit, the gifts of kindness we give to others. We learned this in narrative therapy from Michael White. He would work with people as a family therapist, with those who had the most horrendous lives that you could imagine. And I have worked with people like this too, when I worked with Asylum Seeker Resource Centre as a counselling coordinator. And it was so... they had these terrible memories and terribly sad histories. And we would ask them to think about these kind of things. Or what are the good things from your past? Who have you got? Who is precious in your life? And then the last thing would be, what gifts of kindness have you given to others? Now, a lot of counsellors don't go to that last part that Michael White went to, and now we try and think of, to go to that next step about what have you given to others. And often people say, no, I haven't given anything to anyone, I'm just hopeless, nothing. So I get them to imagine if their closest friend or their closest family member is in the room, what would they say they had given to others? And then they often shyly say, oh yeah, they would say, I was a good friend, or I helped them, or whatever. And that gives hope to a person's soul, to remember the gifts of kindness that they have given to others. And that's a way of helping people to find their redemptive story of hope. And that's what we try and do as counsellors and community workers. And that's what we try and teach in our course of counselling, helping people to find their own redemptive story of hope, so in turn we can help others just as Christ did. So to finish up, I hope that's given you a little taste of what we do in our courses. If people complete our full course of counselling, either the undergraduate or the postgraduate, you can become registered with the Australian Counselling Association, the largest body of registered counsellors in Australia, or you could be registered with the Christian Counselling Association as well. So there's two options, and one day they probably will join, but yeah, whatever. You can be registered. We have an undergraduate degree, a Bachelor of Social Science, majoring in counselling. It's 3 years full-time. And we have a mixed modes of doing things. So we have some weekly classes because it's really nice to meet together and practice in person our counselling skills and get to know each other so that me and the other lecturers can support our students and help them. You're not just a number. We have small classes where we're able to help each person individually. So we have some weekly classes, but not too many because we know people often have to juggle work and family as well. Then we have some units that are over 3 Saturdays of the semester from 10 o'clock to 2 o'clock, and then other ones that are nearly all online. Then we have a Master of Community Counselling, which is, I think it's fabulous. Our first unit is called Oppression, Liberation and Wellbeing. So we really look at the community, broader community aspects, looking at liberation psychology and liberation theology and power issues, and then how to support people holistically. And that's 2 years full time. We have one intensive where I insist that everyone come, even our interstate students, so we get to know you. But after that, it's mostly online because we know people often have full-time work. So it's it's quite a flexible course, but still very much we are supporting you the whole way. So that's just a little glimpse of what we do in our counselling program to help people become registered counsellors, or just to help them if they want to just pick up a few units in whatever work they do, whatever ministry they do, or whatever or just to help themselves, to help them with their relationships with others. They can do a few units with us, and we're happy for that too. So yeah, hopefully that gives you a bit of an idea of what we do here at Eastern in our counselling course. So now I'll hand it back to Christine, our wonderful MC. Thank you, Christine.
Thank you so much for that, Julie. Julie, we're just going to...
That's okay.
So we just have a few questions for you, Julie, that have come through on our live chat, and we can still take some more questions if you've got them too. Our first question is, how practical is the counselling, or how practical are the counselling courses?
Oh, how practical are they? Okay. Yeah, we do a lot of, we talk a lot about counselling practice. It has to be practical because you're going to be working with real people in the community. Of course, we start with the theoretical base because you need to have a strong understanding of the theories so that when you're going to practice, you don't stumble and fall. So if you have a deep understanding of what the theories are and then work through that, that will help you in the practice. But yeah, that's why we have face-to-face classes so that we can practice. And even in this time when we haven't been able to see each other personally face-to-face, we have Zoom sessions where we practice, and then I encourage students to meet in pairs and practice their counselling skills because it's very much a practical hands-on course so that you can work in the real world. And we do a lot of discussion and role-playing and practicing what we're doing in pairs, and then talk about it as a whole group and write reflective papers on our practice. They're not just all theory essays. Of course, we have some theory essays, but we also have presentations and we have reflective papers and no exams.
All right, thanks for that, Julie. Another question that's come through is, where can counsellors work?
Oh, there's lots of different settings that counsellors can work. Interesting, a lot of our counsellors end up being chaplains in schools, often in Christian schools, but sometimes in secular schools. Like one of our recent graduates, Rebecca, she just got, earlier this year, she got a job at Ivanhoe Grammar. That's one of the top schools Anglican, but still not just a little independent school, but one of the top schools in the state. And a lot of our students work at Christian schools or secular schools. Some of them work in their own private practice. In fact, some of our graduates have actually developed their own practice, either counselling or coaching. And now they supervise others and have other counsellors working for them. Some work in church settings, Christian counselling, where the church has a counselling session sort of attached to the church, and they work there, or at a Christian counselling service, or some just work in private practice. So there's lots of different things. Or some go back to doing youth work or pastoral work or whatever, but they use their counselling skills.
All right, so another question that's come in is, do you cover mental health issues in all that is taught to?
Oh yes, all the time, because you have to understand the mental health issues that people come with in order to counsel them. We actually have subjects called mental health issues in counselling, but we also talk about it often. In fact, a lot of the assessments are about looking at one particular mental health issue. It might be the usual things like anxiousness and depression, which everyone has a little bit of, and a little bit is fine and normal. We should be depressed sometimes, and we should be anxious sometimes, so we get out of bed in the morning. But too much is a problem, of course. So then we talk about really the severe end of mental health issues as well, particularly people with self-harming and suicide, and how to deal with that and help develop a safety plan to keep people safe and to help them to be calm. And so we do a lot of work on mental health. And as a psychologist, of course, I'm trained in that very much. Yeah.
All right, so another question is, what's the difference between chaplains and counsellors?
Well, chaplains can talk more upfront about their faith, whereas counsellors, you need to be a bit more careful and just start with working where the person's at. If they don't want to talk about faith issues, we don't talk about faith issues. If they show interest, of course, we can talk to them. Some schools, interestingly enough, we have students that work in schools, and some of them call them chaplain, and some of them call them counsellors, and some of them call them student wellbeing people, and they do virtually the same job. But a chaplain is more likely, if they call them chaplain, to also do a bit of upfront work where they might give talks to students more openly about their Christian values. And they might do more things like what a youth leader or a pastor would do as well. Yep. Oh, and that's the other place students work at. Community agencies, often Christian one, where they give free food and free counselling. And some places they're called a counsellor and some they're called a chaplain, but they do virtually the same.
Okay, thanks, Julie. Another question that's just come in is, what's the difference between Christian counselling and secular counselling? Will a bachelor course enable you to cover both and register as both? Yes.
So we teach people how to do counselling in any setting, which means I guess you could say we're teaching secular counselling. However, we teach it from a Christian perspective so that you bring your values into it, but you can do it in any setting. And often you wouldn't be talking about your Christian faith too much unless this person actually wants to. And a lot of our counsellors work in secular positions as well as Christian positions. Some even in the Christian counselling settings don't use actual Christian or biblical counselling. They might use a more secular type approach like narrative therapy or CBT, but still bring in their Christian values of empathy and compassion, but not necessarily using a particular Christian or biblical counselling. Some do. Some of our students very much, people know that they are a Christian counsellor and they're going to pray with them, and that's what they're set up to do, and people go for them for that, and that's what they do. And yes, so some of them do very particular Christian counselling, but a lot of us just do counselling more generally, and then only bring in the Christian when people ask to bring in Christian.
So, will the Bachelor course enable you to qualify as a counsellor in both the Christian and the secular?
Yeah. Yep. There's plenty of people that join the Australian Counselling Association, and some of them do Christian, some of them do secular, and that's fine. Or you can join the Christian Counselling Association Australia, and you can just do Christian, or you can do secular. It's fine. It's just if you join the Christian one, you'll get more PD things that they offer more. They offer more training in with a more of a Christian emphasis, and the Christian Counselling Association would offer more training without a Christian emphasis, but they also would offer that as well.
All right, thanks, Julie. So another question that's come in is, what's the difference between a psychologist and a counsellor?
Oh, yeah, okay. Well, really, anyone can call themselves a counsellor, although now in Victoria, if you call yourself a counsellor, people expect you to be registered, and they will often check and say, are you a registered counsellor? Which means you have to have done a full course like one of our courses or one of the courses somewhere else that is a full degree, so that you can be a registered counsellor. But to be a registered psychologist, you have to do at least 7 years or more. I got a 3 years bachelor degree, 2 years postgrad at Melbourne Uni, child and adolescent psych. I've got a master's degree, and I've got a PhD. And then I had to do hundreds of days. To be a counsellor, you have to do hundreds of hours to qualify. To be a psychologist, you have to do hundreds and hundreds of days to qualify. So it's much more stringent. But a lot of psychologists dwell more on the mental health stuff rather than counselling. I personally am a community and counselling psychologist, so I've done the community side and the counselling. Some psychologists that are clinical do more on diagnosis and mental health and less on counselling, so there's quite a range.
Excellent, thank you. So we've got another question that's come in. This question is, does the course cover clinical pastoral education and or spiritual director career sort of focus?
Yeah, we cover some of that too, because we don't do the full clinical pastoral thing that you'd have to do at a hospital. There are particular things of clinical pastoral care that you need to do through a hospital. We don't do that, but we do a lot of our counselling skills are very much about pastoral care skills, because basic counselling skills use the same skills as pastoral care in a lot of ways. So yeah, we do a lot on pastoral care issues. And what was the second half again?
So the spiritual director.
Oh, yeah. And we don't do specific spiritual director or spiritual wellbeing or whatever, but we are talking about the spiritual, and we do encourage our students to talk about the Christian worldview in their assessments. So yes, I reckon our students could become spiritual directors, because they also had to do Christian core units along with their counselling units. So I reckon they'd make excellent spiritual directors.
All right, thanks so much, Julie. I suppose you've probably already answered this. What's the difference in the counselling courses offered? What's the difference between the MST and Eastern, in what they offer?
Oh, okay. So I don't think MST doesn't have a specific counselling course as such. I think they might have a bit of chaplaincy type things and pastoral care type stuff, leadership type stuff, so which covers sort of a bit similar grounds. But I think Eastern has more of the focus on being a registered counsellor, and of course we have the education units that are geared for people to become actual teachers in the teaching in schools. But but there is a crossover, because we all have Christian courses. We all have are very much encouraging our students to hold their Christian values precious to them, and use that in everything that they do.
All right, thank you. So I suppose you've already answered this one, but can counsellors share their faith with their clients?
Not really. Well, you can. Yes and no. You can if you're in a Christian setting and you belong to a Christian counselling service where people know they're coming for that. Or I've got one of my master's students who's graduated now, Wendy. She set herself up as a Christian counsellor, and people are referred to her who have been abused, sadly. And they know, and she makes it very clear that I do Christian counselling and I will be talking about Jesus and Jesus comforting you. And she makes that very clear at the beginning, and very much sharing her faith. But a lot of our counsellors know we start where this person is at and what they want to talk about. If we ask them what's important to you and they say my faith is important, you go, oh, tell me about your faith. And you go, oh, I too have a faith. Then you would share your faith, and you could have a wonderful counselling service together, strengthening each other in your faith. But mostly we start from where the client is at and only share our faith if they want to. You have to be careful, I think, sharing your faith with someone who comes to you if they haven't got a faith, because if you put them off by coming on too strong, they don't come back, and then you can't help them at all. So we'd go gently and start with where they're at. But often our Christianity shines through, and I've had clients ask me, but why are you so kind? Why do you do this? And when they ask, then I can tell.
Excellent. So I think that wraps up everything at the moment. So if you've got any more questions, please feel free to jump on the live chat from either the MST or the Eastern websites. We'll be more than happy to answer those questions. Oh wait, we've just got one more question that's come through. What is the ATOR needed to get into a Bachelor course?
Oh, good question. I've never had to worry about that. I just go, anyone who's keen to do counselling and has finished year 12. Most students come to us after they've had a couple of years of life experience, and life experience really helps. But yeah, occasionally we'll get someone straight out of high school, and if they're keen to do it, I'm keen to help them. We'll need to double check that with that dean who makes these final decisions. But from my perspective, I would say go for it. We want to see if you're keen, we will help you. And we do offer extra support if you struggle a little bit with writing at first or whatever. And if you really struggle, well, you can just go away, get a bit more life experience, come back, and you'll be fine.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Julie, for your time shared with us today about how you help train us in counselling and chaplaincy and psychology, and all you do for the students that you help. So
thanks, Christine, and thanks for everyone for your questions. Wow, that was good. It was good to know people are interested, and always happy to share, and always happy for people contact me personally if you want any more information. Thank you.
All right. So thank you for all your questions. Thank you for your time. And if you've got any more questions, please jump on either of the Eastern or Melbourne School of Theology websites, and we will, go from there.